She found a lipstick in his jacket pocket on a Tuesday. Red. Expensive. Not hers. And just like that, a marriage she never wanted became one she couldn't lose. This is the story of Nena and Jae-wook. A contract marriage that should have stayed cold. Professional. Distant. But somewhere between the silence and the secrets, between the jade bracelet and the broken promises, something dangerous happened. They started to care. And in a relationship built on rules, caring is the one thing that breaks everything. Stay with me, because what starts as a business arrangement becomes something far more complicated. Something that will test every boundary they set, every wall they built. And by the end, you'll understand why sometimes the hardest person to love is the one sleeping right next to you. Welcome back to African Korean Story Hub Besties. We're about to start a new journey together once again. Kindly hit the like and subscribe button, as it will be of encouragement to me. Let's begin. Nena-e's never planned to marry a Korean man. Definitely not someone like Jae-wook. But life has this way of taking your careful plans and lighting them on fire. It started with a conversation she wasn't supposed to hear. Her father and his father, two old business partners sitting in a conference room in Lagos, discussing mergers and markets and the future of their companies. And then, almost casually discussing her. My daughter needs opportunities in Seoul, her father said. Your son needs stability for the company politics. That was it. No romance. No courtship. No getting to know you dinners. Just two signatures. A quiet bow. And a plane ticket to a life she didn't choose. The wedding was small, efficient, like signing a mortgage. Jae-wook wore a black suit. His face was calm. Unreadable. He looked at her exactly twice during the ceremony. Once when they signed. Once when they bowed. No kiss. No tears. No promises about love or forever. Just an agreement. And when it was over, he said 4 words to her. Welcome to our arrangement. Our arrangement. Not our marriage. Not our life together. Our arrangement. That should have told her everything. But here's what nobody tells you about contract marriages. The silence is louder than any fight. Their apartment in Gangnam was beautiful. Spotless. Silent. Everything had its place. Including them. Jae-wook had a study. His schedule. His perfectly pressed shirts hanging in exact intervals in the closet. Nena had her side of the bed. Her corner of the bathroom. Her growing collection of questions she was too afraid to ask. They lived like polite strangers. Good morning. Good night. Do you need anything? Every conversation was a transaction. Every interaction had a purpose. He treated her like a respected colleague, a business partner who happened to share his address. And at first, Nena told herself that was enough. The mornings were always the same. Jae-wook would sit at the dining table with his tablet and his tea, his posture perfect, his expression blank. Nena would walk in, hesitate, then sit across from him. Good morning. She'd say, morning. He'd reply, never looking up. Then the questions would start. What time will you return today? Will you need a car? Do you have meetings? Every single morning. The same questions. Like he was running through a checklist. Professional. Polite. Distant. And Nena would answer. Professional. Polite. Dying a little inside. Because this wasn't a marriage. This was a performance. But then there were the nights. And the nights were different. In bed, Jae-wook was a different person. Still controlled. Still careful. But there was something else there. Something warmer. He always asked permission. Always moved slowly. Always made sure she was comfortable. His touch was deliberate. Gentle. Almost reverent. Like she was something valuable he was afraid of breaking. And in those moments, Nena would catch herself thinking, maybe there's something here. Maybe beneath all that ice, there's something real. But then it would end, and he would turn away, pull the blanket up, face the wall. No words, no cuddling, no lingering warmth, just silence. And Nena would lie there in the dark, staring at his back, wondering how someone could hold you so close and still feel so far away. Her friend Chisholm didn't understand it. Girl, your marriage sounds like a business contract. Chisholm said over drinks one night. It is a business contract, Nena replied. But is he at least sweet? Nena laughed. A tired, empty laugh. He's consistent. Chisholm made a face. Consistent? Ada, that's what you call a gym routine, not a husband. But Nena couldn't explain it. How do you tell someone that your husband is perfectly kind and perfectly distant at the same time? How do you explain that you're married to a man who treats you like a responsibility he's determined to fulfill correctly? How do you say that you're lonely in a house where someone is always home? One night, after another quiet dinner, Nena tried. "Jae-wook," she said, "do you ever think we should talk more?" He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in weeks. "If you need anything, you can tell me." "That's not what I mean." "What do you mean?" She took a breath. "I don't know. Maybe get to know each other, beyond the schedule and the logistics." He paused, like the suggestion was confusing. "We are married," he said simply. "We manage our duties. We respect each other. That is enough. That is enough." Those 3 words sat heavy in her chest. "Is it?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer, just stood up, collected his plate, and walked toward his study. And Nena sat there alone at the table, wondering if she just made a terrible mistake. But something had shifted. She didn't know it yet. But that conversation, that small, painful attempt at connection, it had planted a seed. And seeds, once planted, have a way of growing whether you want them to or not. The next morning was different. Jae-wook walked into the kitchen. Same suit, same tea, same unreadable expression. But when Nena sat down, he looked up. "Did you sleep well?" She froze. He'd never asked that before. Yes, fine." He nodded, went back to his tablet. But the question hung in the air. It was small, insignificant. A throwaway line most married couples wouldn't even notice. But for them, it was a crack in the wall. Later that day, Chisholm called. "So how's the Ice Palace?" Nena smiled despite herself. "He asked if I slept well this morning." "Girl, that's it?" "That's the bar." "You don't understand. For him, that's huge." Chisholm sighed. "Nena, please." He asked if you slept well, not if he could build you a castle. Don't get excited over basic human decency. But Nena was excited, because she lived in Jae-wook's silence long enough to know when something changed. And something was changing. She just didn't know it yet. A week later, Nena lost her wedding ring. She tore the apartment apart looking for it. Checked every drawer, every pocket, every corner. Nothing. Her heart raced. Not because the ring was expensive, though it was custom-made, platinum, but because it was a symbol. A symbol that she belonged there, that she was part of his world, part of his carefully constructed life. And now it was gone. When Jae-wook came home that evening, she was sitting on the bed, hands shaking. "Jae-wook," she said, "I need to tell you something." He stopped, put down his briefcase, waited. "I lost my ring." She braced herself for anger, disappointment. That cold, controlled fury she'd seen him direct at incompetent colleagues. But he just blinked. "Okay." She stared at him. "Okay." "Yes." "You're not upset?" He shook his head. "You didn't lose it on purpose." "But it was expensive. It was... I can order another one." Her mouth fell open. He pulled out his phone. "Do you want the same design or a new one?" Wait. You're serious and not angry." He looked at her carefully, like the question itself was strange. "Nena," he said slowly, "why should I be angry?" "Because it was custom-made. Because it costs." "I can replace anything," he interrupted gently, "but I cannot replace trust." The words hit her harder than she expected. She stared at him. This man, this cold, controlled, impossibly distant man. And he continued, "There's only one thing I cannot accept in a marriage." She waited. "Cheating," he said plainly. "That is my boundary. Losing a ring is nothing. Betrayal is everything." Nena felt something shift in her chest. He stepped closer. "As long as we both keep our bodies clean and loyal, the rest can be fixed." She swallowed. "I understand." "Good. I'll order 2 rings. Choose whichever you like." "There's no need for 2. "There is," he said simply. "You are my wife. You deserve the best." And then he walked upstairs, leaving Nena standing there, holding an empty ring box, realizing something terrifying. Her cold husband wasn't just cold. He was principled, protective, and strangely, impossibly loyal. And for the first time since their wedding day, she wondered what else was hiding beneath that frozen surface. The next morning, Nena woke up to a folder on her nightstand. A note on top, Jae-wook's neat handwriting. For review, sign when ready. She frowned, carried it to the kitchen where he sat with his usual tea. What is this? She asked. Documents, he said calmly. She opened it. 5 villas, 2 cars, 3 business shares. A monthly allowance that made her hands tremble. All in her name. Jae-wook, why are all these in my name? It is standard for a legal spouse, he said, not looking up. Everything tied to you must be protected. This is too much. No, he said simply. It is correct. She sat down slowly, stared at the papers. I feel like you're giving me things to replace something else. That made him look up. Replace what? She met his eyes. Love. He didn't flinch. This is not a love marriage, he said. I know, she replied softly. But sometimes I wonder if you're making up for the lack with money. I'm fulfilling my duty, he said. Our agreement was clear. I provide stability and support. You live your life freely. Emotions were not part of the contract. She pressed her lips together. Do you ever think about changing that? Changing what? The fact that we're basically strangers who share a bed. His expression barely shifted, but something flickered there. Something he quickly pushed down. We respect each other, he said. That is enough. Maybe for you. Is it not enough for you? She hesitated. I don't know. He leaned back slightly. Nena, I am not a man who gives emotions easily. I don't know how to, but I won't abandon you. I won't hurt you. I won't embarrass you. I will always stand on your side. She swallowed. That sounds like loyalty. That is what I can give. And what about what you cannot give? She whispered. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, Love is unpredictable. It is messy. I avoid what I cannot control. Nena looked at the signed properties again. You're protecting me like someone you value. I value order, he corrected. And fairness. That's not all you value, she murmured. He froze, but didn't argue. After breakfast, he handed her a pen. Sign when you're ready. Everything is yours whether you use it or not. She signed slowly, her chest tight. As she closed the folder, Jae-wook added, Nena, we might not love each other, but I will not let you feel unsafe with me. She nodded, and as he walked away, she couldn't shake the quiet truth rising inside her. Maybe safety wasn't enough anymore, but maybe it was a start. The contract was clear. The boundaries were set, but something was shifting, something neither of them could control. And control, as Jae-wook was about to learn, is the first thing you lose when you start to care. 3 weeks after the ring incident, Nena's world tilted on its axis, not because of something Jae-wook did, but because of something she found. It was a Wednesday. She was getting ready for work, reached into the closet for a fresh towel, and that's when she saw it, a bright red lipstick, sitting in the pocket of one of Jae-wook's suit jackets. Her heart stopped. She picked it up, turned it over in her hand. The brand was expensive, the shade was bold, and it definitely wasn't hers. Nena had never worn red lipstick in her life. She preferred nudes, soft pinks, nothing that screamed for attention. But this was a statement color. The kind of color a confident woman wore. The kind of color that said, look at me. She checked the other pockets. Nothing. Checked his other jackets. Nothing. Just this one. This single piece of evidence that maybe, just maybe, her cold husband wasn't as loyal as he claimed. And suddenly, all those nights he worked late made sense. All those business trips. All those calm, controlled explanations. All those times he said trust was everything. Had it all been a lie? Nena didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the lipstick burning a hole in her mind. Jae-wook came home late. As usual, he showered, changed, slipped into bed beside her. You're still awake, he said quietly. Couldn't sleep, she replied. He turned toward her. In the darkness, She could feel his gaze. Are you unwell? No. Something is wrong. She almost told him then. Almost held up the lipstick. But fear stopped her. Fear that he confirmed what she suspected. Fear that the one thing he promised to never do, he'd already done. So instead, she said, just tired. He was quiet for a moment. Then his hand found hers under the blanket. If something is wrong, you can tell me. The irony wasn't lost on her. She pulled her hand away gently. I'm fine. He didn't push. Just turned over. Faced the wall. And Nena lay there, alone in a bed with her husband, feeling more isolated than ever. The next morning, Nena confronted him. She waited until he was dressed, briefcase in hand, ready to leave. Jae-wook. He turned. Yes. She held up the lipstick. His expression didn't change. Didn't even flicker. Is this yours? She asked. Man. This was in your suit pocket. Silence settled between them. Heavy. Dangerous. I've never seen that before, he said. Her chest tightened. Don't lie to me. I'm not lying. Then how did it get there? I don't know. She stepped closer. You told me your only rule was fidelity. You said betrayal is the one thing you can't accept. I agreed. I gave you loyalty. I expect the same. His jaw tightened. And I have given that. Then explained the lipstick. I don't know how it got there. Nena shook her head. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I can accept that you don't love me, she said, voice shaking. I can accept that we live like strangers. But I cannot accept another woman touching you. No woman has touched me. Then where did this come from? I don't know. She looked at him. Really looked at him. Searching for a crack in that perfect calm. But there was nothing. Just that same controlled expression. That same steady voice. And maybe that was what hurt most. Even now, even accused of betrayal, he wouldn't break. I want a divorce, she said quietly. The words hung in the air like a blade. For the first time since she'd known him, something raw cracked through his composure. Nena, he said, voice low. Careful. You're making a mistake. No, she whispered. You crossed a boundary. He took a slow breath. Give me 1 day. For what? To prove this is not what you think. She clutched the lipstick tighter. And if you can't, then, he said steadily, I will grant you whatever you want. Nena stared at him, at this man who never raised his voice, never argued, never acted without control. But right there in his eyes, she saw something new, hurt, pride, and something he wasn't ready to name. I'll wait, she finally said. She placed the lipstick on the table and walked out. For the first time since they married, she left him standing alone in the middle of the room, unable to reach her. At work, Nena couldn't focus. Her friend Chisholm found her staring blankly at her computer screen. Girl, what happened? You look like someone died. Nena's voice came out flat. I found lipstick in his jacket. Chisholm's eyes went wide. Lipstick? As in... Yes, female lipstick, not men. Oh my God. Chisholm sat down hard. That cold robot. He cheated? I don't know. What did he say? He said he's never seen it before. He said it'd give him 1 day to prove his innocence. And you believed him? I don't know what to believe. Chisholm grabbed her hand. Nena, listen to me. Men who cheat always have an excuse. Always have an explanation. You need to prepare yourself. But Nena wasn't listening. Because despite everything, despite the lipstick and the doubt and the fear, a small part of her still believed him. The same part that noticed how he ordered 2 rings without question. The same part that saw how he protected her with properties and legal documents. The same part that remembered his words. I will not let you feel unsafe with me. Would a man who said that really betray her? She didn't know, but she was about to find out. When Nena came home that evening, the living room wasn't empty. Jae-wook was there, still in his work clothes. But he wasn't alone. An older woman sat on the couch, Madame Kong, the housekeeper who'd known Jae-wook since childhood. And standing beside her, nervous and pale, was a younger woman, Attorney Nayeon. Nena's stomach dropped. Jae-wook stood. Sit. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. Something sharp beneath the control. Nena sat slowly. Jae-wook pointed to Nayeon. Show her. Nayeon swallowed, pulled out her phone. She opened a video file. CCTV footage. The timestamp showed 3 days ago. Jae-wook's office. In the video, Nayeon looked around nervously, checked the hallway, then approached the coat rack where Jae-wook's jacket hung. She reached into her purse, pulled out a red lipstick, and slipped it into his pocket. Nena's breath caught. Nayeon's hands shook as she held the phone. Director Jae-wook, I'm sorry. I liked you. I thought maybe you would notice. I didn't know your wife would find it. Jae-wook's voice cut through the room like ice. You try to break my marriage because of fantasy. I didn't mean to. Be quiet. Nayeon flinched. Jae-wook turned to Nena. This is the truth. Nena stared at the screen, at the evidence, at the woman who'd almost destroyed everything. Director Jae-wook, please, Nayeon begged. Don't fire me. I made a mistake. Just ignore it. Pretend it never happened. You're done, Jae-wook said coldly. Your resignation letter is ready. HR will process it tomorrow. Nayeon broke down, but Madam Kong escorted her out without sympathy. When the door closed, silence filled the room. Nena finally looked up at Jae-wook. Why? She whispered. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I didn't want you to leave the house thinking I betrayed you, he said quietly. I promise you honesty. Her throat tightened. I'm sorry. He shook his head. You reacted based on the one thing I told you matters most to me. I understand. She looked at the empty doorway, then at the man who'd never lied to her. Not once. Jae-wook, she said, voice breaking. I misjudged you. He exhaled, a soft, almost relieved sound. Nena, he said gently, I told you, I don't cheat. And for the first time since they married, she believed him fully, not because of evidence, not because of proof, but because she finally understood something about him. His control wasn't coldness. It was protection. Protection of himself. Protection of her. Protection of a fragile thing growing between them. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth fighting for. But the lipstick incident changed things. Not in the way Nena expected. It didn't push them apart. It pulled them closer. Because for the first time, they'd both been vulnerable. Both been hurt. Both been forced to confront what they were really afraid of. That night, after Madame Calm left, they sat together on the couch. Not touching. Not speaking. Just existing in the same space. Finally, Jae-wook broke the silence. I meant what I said. Nena looked at him. About what? I will never betray you. She nodded. I know. Do you? She turned to face him fully. Yes, I do now. He studied her face. I don't want polite distance anymore. Her breath caught. What do you want? I don't know, he admitted. But not this. Nena felt something shift in her chest. Then what are we? She asked. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached for her hand, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers wrapped around hers. Warm, steady. We're figuring it out, he said. And for the first time, that felt enough. The next week brought a new problem. A workplace problem that would test Jae-wook's protection in ways Nena never expected. It started with a client meeting. Mr. Kim, a wealthy investor known for flashy deals and flashier lifestyle. Nena's design team had worked for weeks on their pitch. She'd stayed up late perfecting every detail. The presentation went well, until it didn't. When everyone left the conference room for a break, Mr. Kim asked Nena to stay behind. Just a few questions, he said with a smile that made her skin crawl. She stayed. That was her first mistake. Mr. Kim leaned against the table. Too close. You're the Nigerian designer, he said. Pretty and creative. Interesting combination. Nena forced a smile. Thank you, sir. Your work is good, but I like you more. Her stomach tightened. Sir, this is a work meeting. He reached for her hand. Relax. I can help you rise quickly in this field. You don't have to struggle like the others. She pulled her hand back. I don't need that kind of help. He smirked. Your ring finger is empty. No husband around. I could give you a better life. Nena's voice hardened. I'm married. Mr. Kim laughed. To who? A broke man? A foreigner? He stepped closer. Come on, Nena. I can pay you $3 million a year just to be by my side. She looked him dead in the eye. My husband gives me more than that monthly. That shut him up for exactly 2 seconds. Then he scoffed. Lies. If you had a powerful husband, he wouldn't let you work here. I like working. I like you, he said, reaching for her again. She stepped back. I'm not interested, sir. And please keep your hands to yourself. The door opened. Her team returned. Nena gathered her papers and left before anyone could see the anger building behind her eyes. She didn't tell Jae-wook. She told herself it was her problem, her battle. She could handle it. But that night, when she came home and saw his shoes by the door, something in her chest tightened. A confusing mix of relief and fear. Relief that he was there. Fear of what he'd do if he knew. At dinner, he noticed. You're quiet, he said. Just tired. He studied her face. Are you sure? Yes. He didn't push, but his eyes lingered, and Nena wondered if he could see right through her. Later that week, her boss called her into his office. Nena, we have a problem. Her heart sank. What happened? Mr. Kim filed a claim against our company. He says your design proposal caused delays and losses. He's demanding damages. Nena felt heat rush to her face. But he approved everything before the meeting. I know, but he's powerful. If we lose this case, the board will blame our department. What do you want me to do? Stay calm, her boss said. We've hired an external law firm to handle it. Before Nena could ask which firm, the conference door opened, and Jae-wook walked in. Her breath caught. Her boss bowed quickly. Director Jae-wook, thank you for Ko Jae-wook on short notice. Nena stared at her husband in shock. He hadn't told her anything last night. Jae-wook nodded politely, then turned to her. Nena. His tone was calm, but his eyes held something firm. Sit. She obeyed, still stunned. Her boss explained the situation. Jae-wook listened silently, flipping through documents with sharp attention. When he closed the file, he said 2 words. We'll counter. Her boss blinked. Counter? How? Jae-wook looked at Nena. Mr. Kim harassed you. Provide details. Nena hesitated. I didn't want to involve you. I am involved, he said quietly. You're my wife. Her heart stumbled at those words. She recounted everything. The meeting, the touching, the offer, the mockery. Jae-wook's expression never changed. But something cold settled in his eyes. Do you have proof? He asked. Nena nodded slowly. I recorded the part where he offered me money. Her boss nearly choked. You recorded it? She pulled out her phone, opened the audio file. Mr. Kim's voice filled the room. $3 million a year. Just be by my side. Your husband is nobody. I can give you more. When the recording ended, silence. Jae-wook leaned back. We will win this case. Her boss exhaled in relief. Director Jae-wook, thank you. Jae-wook closed the file. Nena acted professionally. Mr. Kim did not. The law will reflect that. Then he stood, gathered the documents. Nena, come. She followed him into the hallway. When they were alone, he said, From today, if anyone insults or threatens you, you tell me immediately. She stared at him. Why are you going this far? He held her gaze steadily. Because no man touches my wife and walks away freely. Nena's breath hitched. There was no romance in his voice. No dramatic tone. Just solid, unshakable conviction. And for the first time, she realized something powerful. Jae-wook might not know how to love out loud, but he knew how to protect. And he protected her like she belonged deeply to him. The next day, Mr. Kim's case disappeared. Not just withdrawn. Destroyed. Word spread through the office that he'd been taken in for questioning. Financial crimes. Bribery. Things that would end his career. Nena didn't ask how it happened. She already knew. Only one person in her world moved like a silent storm. Only one man cleared threats before she even understood the danger. And that night, when she came home, Jae-wook was waiting. Ada, he said quietly, we need to talk. Her heart raced, because the way he said it, the weight in his voice, told her everything was about to change again. The lipstick was explained. The threat was eliminated. But new questions were rising. Questions about trust, about boundaries, about what happens when protection starts to feel like something more. Something neither of them was ready to name. After Mr. Kim's case collapsed, something shifted in their apartment. The silence was still there, but it felt different now. Less like distance, more like anticipation. Like they were both waiting for something to break. Or maybe to finally come together. Jae-wook started doing small things. He'd ask about her day. Actually wait for the answer. He'd adjust the temperature if she seemed cold. He'd leave her favorite tea on the counter before she woke up. Nothing dramatic. Nothing loud. Just small acts of attention that said, I see you. And Nena? She started noticing things too. The way his shoulders relaxed when she walked into a room. The way his hand would hover near the small of her back in public. Not quite touching, but close. The way he'd glance at her when he thought she wasn't looking. Like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't know existed. They were circling each other. Carefully. Slowly. Two people learning a dance they'd never been taught. But then came the family dinner. And everything changed. Jae-wook's aunt requested their presence at a private restaurant in Gangnam. When he told Nena, she expected him to make an excuse. Find a way out. But instead, he said something that stopped her heart. I'll go with you. She almost spilled her tea. You want to come? Yes, he said calmly. You're my wife. That was all. No elaboration. No explanation. Just a simple statement of fact that somehow felt like a declaration. The restaurant was the kind of place that didn't have prices on the menu. The kind where old money gathered to judge new money. They arrived together. And the moment they stepped inside, the entire table paused. Jae-wook's aunt leaned forward with a knowing smile. Nena, you finally dragged our busy Jae-wook out. A cousin whispered loudly. He's even holding her bag. Jae-wook didn't react. Just pulled out Nena's chair and sat beside her. The meal began smoothly. Until Dee, a cousin known for sharp comments wrapped in sweet tones, spoke. Young-hee, I heard you two have been married for a year, she said, eyes glinting. Still no children? Nena smiled politely. We're not in a rush. Dewey scoffed. Maybe he doesn't want any with you. The table went still. Before Nena could respond, Jae-wook placed his chopsticks down. Young-hee, he said, voice calm but final. Don't speak about my wife like that. Dewey pouted. I was just joking. Don't joke at her expense. Nena felt warmth spread through her chest. He defended her. Quickly, firmly, without hesitation. Later in the meal, Dewey tried again. Nena, your bag looks simple. Don't you want something more elegant? Something that matches the family standard? Nena looked at her small black handbag. The one she'd bought before the marriage. Nothing fancy. Before she could speak, Jae-wook reached under the table, placed something beside her chair. A box. Use this instead, he said quietly. Nena opened it. Her breath caught. Hermes. Birkin. White. Limited edition. The kind of bag people waited years to buy. The kind that cost more than most people's annual salary. The table gasped. Jae-wook's aunt clapped softly. Ah, our Jae-wook has excellent taste. Doo-hee sat frozen. Speechless. Nena's hands trembled slightly. Jae-wook, this is too much. He looked at her. Tone gentle but firm. It's not. She swallowed hard. The rest of the dinner shifted immediately. Relatives who'd ignored her now complimented her work. Those who whispered now smiled politely. But Nena kept glancing at Jae-wook. Not because of the bag. Not because of the attention. But because he defended her. Publicly. Decisively. Without expecting thanks. And something in her chest tightened. Something that felt dangerously close to falling. On the ride home, she held the box in her lap. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. I know, he replied. Then why? He kept his eyes on the road. Because you're my wife. Her heart thudded. They drove in silence for a while. Then Nena spoke. Jae-wook, can I ask you something? Yes. Why now? Why are you suddenly different? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I'm not different. You're just finally seeing me. She turned to look at him. His profile was calm, composed, but his hands gripped the steering wheel a little tighter than necessary. What do you mean? She asked. I've always protected you, he said. I've always provided for you. I've always stood on your side. He paused. But you thought those were obligations. Duties. Weren't they? He shook his head slowly. No. Nena felt something crack open in her chest. Every morning I asked about your schedule, he continued. Not because I had to, because I wanted to know you were safe. Every time I gave you something, it wasn't to replace emotion. It was to show you that you matter. His voice dropped, but I didn't know how to say it. So I showed it, and you thought I was cold. Tears burned behind Nena's eyes. Jae-wook, you don't have to say anything, he said quietly. I just wanted you to know. It was never duty. It was always choice. They pulled into the apartment garage. Jae-wook turned off the engine, but neither of them moved. Finally, Nena whispered, I'm sorry. For what? For not seeing it sooner. He looked at her, really looked at her. You see it now, he said. That's enough. And in that moment, sitting in a silent car in a dark garage, Nena realized something terrifying. She was falling in love with her husband. The next morning, Nena woke to something on her dresser, a small velvet box. She opened it carefully. Inside was a jade bracelet, smooth, glowing, deep green. It looked ancient, precious. She touched it lightly. It was cold, heavy. It's for you. She turned. Jae-wook stood in the doorway. For me? Why? He walked closer. My sister-in-law is one. It's a family piece. You should have yours too. Nena blinked. He'd thought about such things. But when she lifted the bracelet, she noticed something. A crack. Thin but visible. She frowned. It's broken. Jae-wook stiffened. It was repaired. Repaired. His voice remained even, but his shoulders tensed. I planned to give it earlier, but the original was damaged. They fixed it. Nena studied the bracelet carefully. If it was so important, why? She looked up at him. Did this belong to someone else? He paused. That pause told her everything. Jae-wook, she said softly, tell me the truth. He didn't speak immediately. Instead, he sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor, like he was fighting old shadows. It belonged to my mother, he said finally. Nena's chest tightened. He rarely mentioned his family. Only brief comments about his father or brother. Never his mother. She gave it to my sister-in-law before she passed. He continued. I kept the other one. Nena touched the box again, more carefully now. You didn't have to give this to me. I did, he replied. You're my wife. You should have it. But something in his tone felt incomplete. Why were you hesitant before? Nena asked. You looked pained when you said her name. He exhaled slowly. Some memories are not easy. Some things were not happy. Nena understood immediately. Pain. Those were things she saw in him every day without fully knowing why. I'm sorry, she whispered. He lifted his head slightly. Why are you sorry? For making you talk about something that hurts. He shook his head. You didn't. I just needed time. She closed the box gently. Thank you. I'll wear it. He stood, walked to her, and took her hand. You don't have to wear it every day, he said softly. Just keep it. It means something. His thumb brushed over her knuckles. Nena felt her heart become warm. I will. But when he left for work, she looked at the green stone again, and something in her chest tightened. Not jealousy, not fear, something deeper. A need to understand, a need to help, a need to heal whatever wound was hiding behind this bracelet. That afternoon, Nena couldn't focus on work. The bracelet haunted her thoughts. The crack, the pain in Jae-wook's voice. The way he'd sat on the bed, like he was carrying something too heavy to name. When she got home, she found Aunt Minji in the kitchen. Aunt Minji, the older woman who'd helped raise Jae-wook since childhood. Auntie, Nena said softly, can I ask you something? Aunt Minji looked up with a warm smile. Of course, dear. Nena pulled out the velvet box. "Do you know about this bracelet?" Aunt Minji froze. Her expression changed, not with anger, but with something close to sadness. "You should ask Jaewook," she said gently. "I did," Nena whispered, "but he didn't tell me everything." Aunt Minji sighed, sat down, motioned for Nena to sit beside her. "That bracelet," she began, "was part of a pair. One belonged to his grandmother, the other to his mother, Madame Lee." Nena listened quietly. "His mother was a beautiful woman," Aunt Minji continued. "Smart, elegant. Everyone loved her." She paused, but her heart was restless. Nena frowned. "Restless?" Aunt Minji nodded sadly. She had an affair for a long time. Nena's breath caught. And one day, when Jaewook was only 10 years old, he walked in on her, holding hands with another man. Nena's eyes widened. Her hand flew to her mouth. "He was only 10, Aunt Minji whispered. "Too young. Too young to understand why the person he adored most was kissing someone who wasn't his father." Nena felt tears prick her eyes. "His mother tried to explain," Aunt Minji continued. "Tried to pretend it wasn't what he saw. But children understand betrayal more clearly than adults think." She lowered her voice. "He stopped calling her mother that day. He stopped smiling. He stopped trusting easily. And when Madame Lee passed a few years later, he refused to attend the funeral." Nena pressed a hand to her heart. "So that was a wound. That was the reason behind his coldness, his control, his fear of emotions, the wall he'd built long before she entered his life." "And the bracelet?" she asked quietly. Aunt Minji smiled sadly. "The original cracked during an argument. The day he found out, he threw it against the wall." Nena's throat tightened. "But later," Aunt Minji continued, "he picked it up and kept it all these years. He never intended to give it to anyone, not until you." Nena looked down at the box. "He gave it to you," Aunt Minji said gently, "not because of duty, because your presence softens the places he once shut down." Nena blinked rapidly. "I didn't know," she whispered. "You didn't need to know," Aunt Minji replied. "But now that you do, treat that bracelet with care. It's not just jade." "What is it then?" Nena whispered. "It's the one thing he saved from the woman who broke him," Aunt Minji said softly. "If he chose to give it to you, it means he trusts you with part of his heart that never healed." Nena's eyes burned, and in that moment, she understood something clearly. She didn't just want to heal him. She was already falling in love with him. That night, Nena couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw a 10-year-old boy standing in a doorway, watching his world shatter. Saw him picking up a broken jade bracelet. Saw him choosing silence instead of tears. By morning, the weight in her chest was unbearable. She placed the bracelet back in its box, not because she didn't want it, but because she finally understood what it meant to him. When Jaewook returned from an early meeting, he stopped at the entrance. She was waiting for him in the living room. "Nena," he said, "you're up early." She stood, hands trembling. "We need to talk." He walked closer, guarded. "About what?" She held out the velvet box. His expression changed instantly, eyes sharpening, body tensing. "Did something happen to it?" "No," she said quietly. "It's fine." He exhaled, but the tension didn't leave him. "Then why are you giving it back?" Nena swallowed hard. "Because this bracelet is not just jade. It's a wound you carried for years. I don't want to hold something that still hurts you." His jaw tightened. "It doesn't hurt." "You don't have to pretend," she whispered. He looked away, voice dropping. "That part of my life is over." Nena shook her head gently. "If it was truly over, you would have told me the full story instead of hiding it." He stiffened. "Who told you?" "Aunt Minji." He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the coldness he used as armor returned. "You shouldn't have asked her." "I asked because I care," Nena said softly. "Because I want to understand you." "I didn't give you the bracelet for pity," he said sharply. "Or because I'm broken." "I know," she replied. "You gave it because you trust me with something personal. But I don't want it if it makes you remember pain you didn't choose to share." He stepped closer, voice low. "Stop trying to protect me. I'm not protecting you, she whispered. I'm trying to love you. The moment the words left her mouth, they froze between them. Nena's heart raced. She'd said it without planning, without thinking. Jae-wook stared at her like she'd said something impossible. You love me, he said slowly. Her voice trembled. I didn't mean to say it like that. But yes, I feel something real. He swallowed hard, his control cracking for the first time in years. And you think returning the bracelet will make me what? His voice shook with something she'd never heard. Fear. Safe? Distance me? Protect me from you? No, Nena said. I'm giving it back because I want the next thing you give me to be something without pain attached. Something you choose freely. Not something you force yourself to offer. His eyes softened in a way that melted every wall between them. He lifted the box slowly, closed it, held it against his chest. You don't understand, Nena, he said quietly. He took her hand, placed the box back in her palms, covered it with his own. I didn't give this to you because I was ready, he whispered. I gave it because you're the only person I've ever wanted to give it to. Nena's breath caught. No one else, he said. Not even the person who hurt me. Only you. Her eyes filled. And if you return it, he finished softly, I fear you're returning me too. The bracelet felt heavier now, not with pain, but with meaning. Slowly, Nena closed her fingers around it. I'm not returning you, she whispered. He exhaled shakily. She stepped closer, rested her forehead against his chest, and let him hold her. For the first time, Jae-wook let himself hold someone like he wasn't afraid of breaking. The days after felt different. Calmer, warmer, clearer. Jae-wook touched her more, his hand on her lower back, his fingers brushing hers. Small gestures that said, I'm here. One morning, Nena kissed his cheek before leaving for work. A small, shy kiss. He froze in surprise, then smiled softly. Be safe. Call me if anything happens. I will, she promised. But fate had other plans. At a construction site inspection, a loose plank slipped. Nena didn't see it until someone shouted. She turned. The plank struck her shoulder, knocked her backwards. She hit the ground. Not hard enough to break anything, but enough to slam her head. Everything spun. Coworkers rushed over. Nena, are you okay? She tried to stand but stumbled. I'm fine, I think. She wasn't. Her vision blurred. A sharp ringing filled her ears. Someone called an ambulance. Someone else called Jae-wook. 15 minutes later, he burst into the emergency ward. Nena, he called, voice cracking. She looked up weakly. I'm okay. You're not, he said, rushing to her side. His hand trembled slightly when he cupped her cheek. It's okay, he whispered. I'm here now. The doctor confirmed a mild concussion. No internal bleeding. Just rest and observation. They placed her in a private room. When the nurse asked who would stay overnight, Jae-wook didn't hesitate. I will. Nena tried to protest. You have work. I don't care. She blinked. But... Nena, he said softly, I am staying with you. He sat beside her bed, refusing to leave. Hours passed. Nena dozed in and out of sleep. Each time she opened her eyes, he was there, adjusting her blanket, checking her water, brushing hair from her forehead. At one point, she whispered, Don't have to watch me like that. His voice was quiet. I thought I lost you today. Her breath caught. He looked away, eyes tight. When they called, I felt something I haven't felt since I was a kid. Panic. Real panic. She reached for his hand, squeezed gently. I'm here. He exhaled shakily. When Nena was discharged the next afternoon, Jae-wook insisted on driving her home. He held her elbow as they walked, opened every door, even adjusted her seatbelt for her. It wasn't dramatic, just steady, quiet care that felt heavier than any confession. At home, he guided her to the couch. Rest, he said. She smiled. I'm not fragile. He shot her a look that silenced her instantly. You're not fragile, he said, but you scare me. She blinked, startled by the honesty in his voice. He sat across from her, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly. It was the same posture he used when hiding something deep, What's wrong? She asked gently. He didn't look up. I've been thinking. About what? He exhaled slowly. About us. Nena's heart thudded. He finally lifted his eyes, and the vulnerability there startled her. When I saw you in the hospital bed, he paused, voice rough. I felt something I didn't want to feel. Fear, she whispered. More than fear, he admitted. Something I've avoided all my life. Nena swallowed. Loving someone? He looked away, jaw tightening. I don't know if it's love, but I know it's too much, and too fast. Her chest tightened, not because she was hurt, but because she could hear the truth in his voice. He wasn't pulling away out of rejection. He was pulling away out of fear. Jae-wook, she said softly. I'm not your mother. I know, he said quickly. Then don't punish yourself for caring. He looked at her again. Something conflicted in his eyes. Caring means losing control. It means depending on someone. It means... He exhaled shakily. It means they can leave. Nena moved to sit beside him. Look at me, she whispered. He did. I'm not leaving, she said. You're not a 10-year-old boy anymore. You're not waiting for someone to choose someone else over you. He stared at her like she was speaking a language he didn't know he understood. She touched his hand. But I won't force you to feel anything. His fingers curled around hers instantly, like he didn't want her to let go. That's the problem, he said quietly. I want you close. And that scares me. Nena leaned her head on his shoulder gently. He didn't move away. Then we'll take it slow, she murmured. I'm here, not going anywhere. For a long moment, he just breathed, slow, heavy breaths, like he was calming a storm inside him. Then he spoke, voice quiet against her hair. I don't want slow. She lifted her head slightly. His eyes were conflicted, but his hand tightened around hers. I want you, he confessed, but I don't know how to want someone without losing myself. Nena cupped his cheek lightly. Then we'll learn together. He swallowed hard, leaned into her palm, but she noticed something else. He hadn't kissed her since the hospital, hadn't touched her the way he used to, not from lack of desire, but because he was scared of how much he wanted her. That night, after Nena fell asleep on the couch, Jae-wook covered her with a blanket and stayed beside her, watching her breathe. He whispered into the quiet room, I don't want distance, but I don't know how to do this. Love was pulling him forward. Fear was pulling him back. And Nena, soft and steady, was right in the middle. The next morning, Nena woke up alone. A folded blanket covered her legs. A glass of water sat on the table. The house was too quiet. She stood slowly, called out, Jae-wook. No answer. Aunt Minji appeared from the hallway. Oh, dear, he already left. What? He didn't wake me. He said you needed rest, Aunt Minji replied. He mentioned a business trip. Nena's heart dropped. For how long? A couple of weeks, I think. Her chest tightened. No message. No note. No goodbye. At first, she waited patiently. Day 1. Day 2. Day 3. No calls. No texts. Not even a one-line update. She tried not to overthink. He's busy. He warned me he was overwhelmed. Give him space. He'll reach out. But by day 6, her chest felt heavy. By day 10, she couldn't sleep. By day 12, she started checking her phone every few minutes. She replayed his last words again and again. I want you, but I don't know how to want someone without losing myself. She wondered if she'd pushed too hard, if loving him had scared him away, if her confession made him retreat behind the same walls he'd promised to lower. She stopped eating properly, stopped joking with Chisholm, stopped sleeping in the bed they'd shared. Day 14. Aunt Minji found Nena staring blankly at her food. You're worried, she said gently. Nena forced a smile. No, I'm just tired. Aunt Minji sat beside her. He'll come back. Will he? Jae-wook always disappears when he's overwhelmed, Aunt Minji said. But he always returns. Nena swallowed. But what if this time he doesn't? He will, Aunt Minji said firmly. Because this time he isn't running away from problem. What's he running from then? Something new, Aunt Minji replied. Feeling safe with someone. Nena's eyes stung. He has never trusted anyone this much. Aunt Minji continued. That alone is frightening for him. Nena nodded slowly. Try to swallow the ache. Day 17. Nena woke before sunrise. She moved through the living room, straightened cushions, opened curtains, and sat on the couch, staring at the door. She didn't know what she was waiting for. A message? A call? His voice? Finally, she whispered to herself, maybe I should let him go. Saying it hurt more than she expected. She looked at the jade bracelet on her wrist. It glowed softly in the morning light. Don't return me. His words echoed in her head. She sighed, pressed the bracelet gently against her chest. I miss you, she whispered into the empty room. I miss you so much. Her voice cracked. Tears filled her eyes. Just then, a soft click. The front door unlocked. Nena froze. It opened slowly, and Jae-wook stepped inside. He looked exhausted, eyes dark, clothes wrinkled, hair messy, like he hadn't slept properly the entire trip. He shut the door, lifted his head, and saw her. For a moment, he didn't breathe. Then he exhaled shakily. Nena! Her eyes filled again. He stepped forward, slow, unsure, afraid. You're really here, she whispered. He swallowed hard. I came back. She stood, trembling. Why didn't you call? Why didn't you text? 17 days, Jae-wook. He closed the distance between them in 2 steps. His voice was low, rough, breaking. I tried, he said. Every day I tried. But every time I reached for my phone, I realized how much I missed you, and it scared me more. Her breath caught. He took her face in his hands. Gently. Nena, he whispered. I didn't stay away because I wanted distance. Her heart pounded. I stayed away because I realized something. What? She whispered. He rested his forehead against hers. I'm in love with you. For a moment, Nena couldn't breathe. His forehead was against hers, his hands warm on her cheeks. And the words he just said, words she'd waited 17 painful days to hear, echoed in her chest. Say it again, she whispered. He opened his eyes slowly, voice low and steady. Nena, I am in love with you. A tear slipped down her cheek. He wiped it with his thumb, his own breath unsteady. I didn't leave to hurt you, he whispered. I left because I wasn't ready to feel this much. I didn't know how to be close without fearing you'd disappear, like she did. Nena shook her head softly. I'm not going anywhere. He closed his eyes, shoulders finally relaxing, like those words untied every knot inside him. I know that now, he said. She touched his chest lightly, over his heartbeat. Then why did you stay away for so long? He swallowed. Because loving you didn't feel like losing control anymore. It felt like learning how to live, and that terrified me. He paused. I had to face myself before I faced you. Nena's heart warmed. And now, she asked. He cupped her face gently. Now I want you fully. Not because of our contract. Not because of obligation. His voice dropped. But because I choose you. Nena exhaled shakily, leaning into his touch. I choose you too. A quiet silence hovered between them. Warm, peaceful, final. Then he pulled her into his arms. This time it wasn't cautious or polite. He held her like someone who'd been starving for 17 days. She held him like someone who'd been waiting 17 days to breathe again. Later, they sat on the couch, her legs tucked beside him, his arm resting behind her like it belonged there. He looked at her wrist, traced the jade bracelet gently. You kept it, he murmured. Of course, she whispered. It's part of you. It's a reminder of my past, he said. It's also a promise of your future, she replied. He looked at her, a long, searching look, then nodded. Nena, he said, I want to talk about us. She straightened, nervous. Okay. He took her hand in both of his. Let's end the contract. Her breath caught. He continued before she could misunderstand. I don't want a marriage with rules or distance or conditions. He looked directly into her eyes. I want a real marriage, one we choose every day. Her heart pounded. Are you sure? She asked. Yes. He lifted her hand to his lips. I want to be your husband, not on paper, but here. He touched his chest. And here. He touched hers. Nena felt warmth spread through her entire body. I want that too, she said softly. He kissed her forehead. A slow, lingering kiss that said everything words couldn't. Then, from today, he whispered, no more contract. Only choice, she finished. He smiled. The kind of smile she'd never seen on him before she came into his life. Nena rested her head on his shoulder, closing her eyes. Soul moved quietly outside their window, but inside, everything felt new. A past filled with silence, a marriage filled with distance, a contract filled with rules, all replaced by one simple truth. They loved each other, not by force, not by duty, but by choice. But loving someone doesn't erase old fears overnight. Jae-wook still had moments where he'd pull back, just slightly, when emotions felt too big, too fast. Nena learned to recognize those moments, the way his jaw would tighten, the way his eyes would grow distant, and she learned not to push. Instead, she'd take his hand, give him space, let him come back on his own, and he always did. One evening, 3 months after his return, they were having dinner. Jae-wook was quieter than usual. What's on your mind? Nena asked. He looked up. I've been thinking about something. What? Children. Nena nearly dropped her fork. He continued calmly. Not now, but eventually, I'd like to have them. With you. Her eyes widened. You want children? Yes. But you never mentioned. I never thought about it before, he said. I never wanted to bring a child into marriage without love. He paused. But now things are different. Nena felt tears prick her eyes. Jae-wook. He reached across the table, took her hand. I want to build a family with you. Nena, a real one. Not because of duty or pressure, but because I love you. She squeezed his hand tightly. I'd like that too, she whispered. He smiled. That rare, soft smile. And for the first time since his mother's betrayal, Jae-wook allowed himself to imagine a future with warmth, with laughter, with children who would never doubt they were loved. A future with Nena. 6 months later, Nena stood in their bedroom, adjusting the jade bracelet on her wrist. It had become a ritual. Every morning, she'd touch it gently, a reminder where they'd been and where they were going. Jae-wook walked in, already dressed for work, but he stopped when he saw her. What? She asked, smiling. He walked over, wrapped his arms around her from behind, rested his chin on her shoulder. Nothing, he murmured. Just looking at my wife. She leaned back against him. Your wife is going to be late if you don't let go. Maybe I don't want to let go. She turned in his arms, looked up at him. You've changed, she said softly. Have I? Yes. You smile more now. You touch me more. You say what you're feeling. He cupped her cheek. You change me. No, she corrected. I just helped you become who you always were underneath. He kissed her, slow and deep, when they pulled apart. He whispered against her lips. I love you. 3 words he'd once been terrified to say. Now he said them every day. I love you too, she whispered back. They stood there for a moment, wrapped in each other. 2 people who'd started as strangers, who'd lived as polite acquaintances, who'd fought through misunderstandings and fears and painful pasts, and who'd finally found their way to something real, something lasting, something worth fighting for. 1 year later, Nena stood in the nursery they'd just finished decorating. Soft yellow walls, white furniture, a mobile hanging above the crib. Jae-wook walked in behind her, wrapped his arms around her growing belly. It's perfect, he murmured. She placed her hands over his. Are you scared? Terrified, he admitted, but in a good way. She turned to look at him. You're going to be an amazing father. He kissed her temple. I had a good teacher. Who? You, he said. You taught me that love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up every day, even when it's hard. Nena's eyes filled with happy tears. We're really doing this, she whispered. Yes, he said. Together. She leaned back against him, looking at the empty crib. Soon it wouldn't be empty. Soon their daughter would be here. A daughter who would grow up knowing she was loved, wanted, chosen. A daughter who would never doubt her father's devotion, because Jae-wook had broken every chain from his past, had faced every fear, had learned to love without walls. And as they stood there in the golden afternoon light, Nena whispered something she'd said once before, from contract to choice. Jae-wook smiled against her hair. Always choice, he agreed. Always you. Some love stories start with fireworks. Others start with silence. But the ones that last? Those are the ones where two people choose each other. Every single day. Through doubt. Through fear. Through pain. They choose to stay. They choose to fight. They choose to love. And that choice, renewed daily, becomes the greatest love story of all. This was Nena and Jae-wook's story. A contract that became a choice. A marriage that became a love story. Two strangers who became forever. If this story moved you, drop a comment below. Tell me what moment hit you hardest. Was it the lipstick? The jade bracelet? The 17 days of silence? Let me know. And if you stayed until the end, you're part of something special. You're part of a community that believes in real stories. Complex stories. Stories that don't take the easy way out. So subscribe. Hit that notification bell. Share this with someone who needs to hear that love can grow in unexpected places. Because here's the truth. Sometimes the best love stories aren't about finding the right person. They're about becoming the right person. For someone else. And for yourself. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying. And remember, every great love story starts with a choice. Make yours count. I'll see you in the next one.